All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Joanna Celestina, and I'm the chapter chair for IDSA Cleveland. And welcome to Advancing Design Maturity. Okay, so just to get started, this event is a brief discussion exploring the use of design methodologies in business. Our panelists will discuss their experiences with championing design, roadblocks they've had to face, along with some best practices. Just some quick housekeeping. This is in celebration of National Industrial Designers Day, which IDSA is currently we have the day on March 5th. Just letting you know that along with this event, along with some other chapter events, we will be IDSA National is hosting a coffee hour on Friday at 12 p.m. EST. You can go to their website and RSVP right there, and they'll send you the link and all the information. And also now through March 5th, they are also offering 50% off any new or renewing one-year memberships. So if you're not a member of IDSA, now is a great chance to become part of the community and just get to see everything that being a member does for you. Okay, so who are we? We'll just do some quick introductions. I've already introduced myself. I'm an industrial designer at Energizer Holdings in Westlake, Ohio.
And I'm Scott Urban, designer at the Metcalf Group.
Jason Simeon, vice chair for the Cleveland chapter, and I lead design for the Moen Fortune Brands Global Plumbing Group.
And I'm Kristen Brinza, and I'm an industrial designer at Neon Carrot.
I'm Christopher Bourne. I am R&D manager and design director at Energizer Holdings.
Yes. So really quick, we love Cleveland. A lot of people talk down about our city, but there's a lot going for us. We have a huge design community here in Cleveland, which is why we wanted some of our panelists who are Cleveland-based designers to speak a little bit and promote our city a little more. So some housekeeping. For those of you in the audience today, your mics are automatically muted. If you would like to ask a question or make a comment, please use the chat feature and we will elevate it to the panelists throughout the discussion. Or if you would like, you can raise your hand feature and we will try our best to unmute your mic so you can ask it yourself. Okay, so today's panelists, we have Christopher Bourne from Energizer Holdings, Jessica Birchfield from Moen, and Renee Poland from Balance Innovation and Design. If you guys wanted to just give a quick intro about yourselves, that would be great.
Do you want to do this in alphabetical order?
Go for it, just down the line.
Okay, Jessica, you first.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm Jessie Birchfield, and I currently work at Moen with Jason. Jason is my design director. And I am a principal industrial designer focused on trend strategy. So I started my relationship with Moen actually working with Renee at Balance, where Moen was one of our clients. That was a little over 10 years ago now that I started working there, and then was an independent contractor for a few different brands, including Moen. And then about 4 years ago is when I joined as a senior industrial designer. And then 2 years ago is when my title shifted and Jason actually created these principal industrial design roles. So would you like me to go and talk about what my role is, or is that something we'll talk about in a little bit?
Just in a little bit, we will go over that. Sure. We have some questions for you guys, but thank you.
I've been at Energizer now for about 4 years. When they purchased my previous employer, I've been in the Cleveland area for a little over 3 years, where they moved me out here. Ostensibly, I do the direction of all industrial design work for Energizer through our in-house resource and third-party consultancies. And I also do all the people management functions associated with that responsibility. I got into design by way of the Canadian oil industry. I used to work in that industry doing subsurface mapping. I got kind of tired of the bipolar economic swings of that industry, which are still going on. And so I did industrial design as a midlife career change. I went back to school at 35, graduated, have been working in design now, industrial design for 26 years. I have worked for consultancies in-house. I prefer in-house. I like the depth of in-house. And worked for such names as Clear One, Zero Halliburton, aluminum cases, Energizer, worked with clients, Sony, NEC, Hitachi, other ones like that. Still enjoy design.
I'm Renee Pullen. I am the president and founder of Balance Innovation and Design. I too have been doing this for a long time. And I started Balance about 17 years ago. And in all honesty, I don't really design much anymore. I have a team of amazing designers. Jessie Birchfield was one of those designers a while back. And for the record, we never wanted to let her go, but she moved. I guess your husband went to Cornell, and you guys went off to school for a while there, and there weren't the remote possibilities like there are now. So we do miss Jessie. So Jason, you're a lucky man. But I got started out in toys, and we can talk about that further as we move in later. But toy design was my thing. I designed. And I guess if you look at every possible toy that I've ever designed, hundreds of pieces of landfill, I guess, have come from my hand. But we work with a lot of different companies. Moen, in particular, is one of our great clients, and we're in many, many different markets. And we're here in Cleveland.
Great. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate that. All right. All right, so Jason's going to kick off the discussion, just giving some quick background so we can segue into the questions.
Yeah, I won't take up too much time. I mean, we're really here to hear from our panelists, but I just want to set kind of a tone for why we're even having this discussion. What is design maturity, and how did this all really come about? So I just want to give kind of a brief history about how design has evolved over time. And this could go really in depth, and we're not going to really drill down that deep, because the foundations of really participatory design can really be traced back to Plato's New Republic, right? So we're not going back that far. If we go to the next slide, Joanna, what we're really talking about is kind of design that has occurred after this inflection point when really Moore's Law was kind of introduced. History has proven that humans are really quite slow to change. And whenever we're introducing great new technologies and great new products to the market, especially as designers, we're responsible for a lot of that. The more and more complexity and function that we pour into all these products, the complexity goes up, and people struggle with how to use them and adapt to them. So as Moore's Law is really kind of introduced over time, history has shown that people struggle with change in that way. And so if you go to the next slide, the time, there was a time before kind of Moore's Law where as products were developed, they were limited by the tools that we even had to create and manufacture products, right? So the evolution of product development was slower, and people had time to sort of adjust to those things because they weren't coming out every year. They were like every decade something new would come out. And so that was a time when product evolution really occurred slower, and human adaptation could track with it. Go to the next slide. As Moore's Law really started to take effect and product complexity quickened, that inflection point where human capacity to adapt really couldn't keep up with the technological changes as those occurred, there quickly became an opportunity identified on the next slide, where after that inflection point, there's this great design opportunity to help tame and manage a lot of the complexity that is poured into all these new products and gizmos and gadgets and everything. So as capabilities matured, the product complexity went up, and that's really when we started to see a sizable opportunity space for design to live. And so as a result, if we go to the next slide, there were a lot of milestones that in technological complexity, you'll see in the red up top. This is kind of an eye chart. We're not going to go through it all. But at the bottom, you can see how the design industry really kind of shaped and changed. When personal computing came out in the late 70s, early 80s, human-centered design was kind of the way to deal with that, the way to create an industry and a process and a way to kind of commoditize how we design for personal computing. Then in the late 80s and 90s, cell phones started to become predominant. Digital photography, smartphones, the iPod, the iPhone, social media started exploding around the turn of the century. IDEOs popularizing this notion called design thinking and building empathy with users. Very similar to human-centered design, but taking a little bit more of a collaborative approach to it. Again, businesses evolving with how to deal with the complexity of everything that's entering the market and the changes. You know, when Tesla started releasing their first products in the early 2000s, like 2008 timeframe, the gig economy that came after that, this need for service design, actually designing this sort of interface between you know, design of products and design of services and how they meet physical products. And it was just a lot of complexity to handle. Things like meta design and design maturity started to become part of conversations where companies could then you know, create and analyze how they're responding to the needs of their consumers, right, as they became more complex. And so we're here to talk about design maturity with our panelists. And certainly there's a lot of companies that are going to need a lot of it with this whole post-pandemic world that we're entering in this new phase of life. As you can see there on the far right there, global remote work has now become kind of a standard that we're all adapting to. So really curious to see how our panelists have seen design maturity evolve in their various companies.
Okay. Thank you. And we can kick off the discussion. Scott, you've got some intro questions now.
Yeah, so we did get a pretty good intro from everybody, but going back to Jessica, so how did you first get into design as a career?
I love this question. I feel like every one of us has some unique story of how we found out industrial design exists, because it's not as commonly known as like graphic design or even interior design. So for me, you know, growing up, I always felt the most at home in art class. I always felt like it was like my turf, you know, like for recess, I would sneak back into the art room and do an extra art project, you know, instead of like playing sports. So that was me. But I never really considered it as a career path until my sister actually went to CIA for interior design. And that's when my eyes were really opened up to all of the applied arts options. I, you know, had the opportunity to attend spring show as a high schooler. And, you know, I even had a chance to sit in on some of the critiques in when she was there in school. And I just remember sitting in a critique with Dan Cafaro and Richard Fiorelli. And if you guys know Richard Fiorelli, like the types of things he brings up in critiques will just blow your mind. And I just had that same feeling of like, I'm home, I found my people. Like, I love what they're talking about. Like, I can't believe that they're marrying like these elements of art that I love with, you know, like business goals and like how you can promote a brand through art, you know. And I think that combined with, you know, the fact that when I would take those like aptitude tests that they have you do in like middle school, mine would always show up as like, oh, you like to help people, you should be a nurse or a social worker or an occupational therapist, because there's a little bit of a creative side to that, you know. And so that was kind of what I was gearing myself up to do. And then I really saw an opportunity with industrial design where I was marrying, you know, that desire to like help people. And you know, it also, you know, was paired with that mix of right brain and left brain thinking. And it just, yeah, it felt like home. It felt like I found my people. So yeah,
Oh, very good. Yeah. And so you said your current role is focused on trend strategy. So how long have you been in that role? And could you talk a little bit more about what you do as a—
Sure, yeah.
In that role?
Sure. So when I started Moen, even as a contractor, I was helping a lot with our trend research. And that's always a skill that our industrial design team has had. And it wasn't really until about 2 years ago when my role was actually dedicated to lead our trend strategy efforts that we really had an ability to make it a lot more visible to our company, both internally and externally to our customers. So building that specialty really helped, increase our design maturity in that way, because just with that title shift alone, but also having more dedicated time to spend on creating more detailed show reports, things we always did, but organizing them and starting to, we're still in the process of refining that so that we are using the same terminology every time we put out one of those reports, and then putting together a master report that synthesizes all of those inputs, and then testing that every year with top interior designers around the country. So I work really closely with our internal consumer marketing insights team to actually design and maintain a consistent study that will turn those inputs into like objective data that the business feels a lot more comfortable acting on.
That feels very relevant to today's discussion.
It's new though. It's where it's only been a couple of years, but the more consecutive years that we do the same study with the same terms, I think you start to actually get start to see trajectories, and so it's really powerful tool we're excited about.
Nice. And it's visible pretty high up in the company. I know you're working with other departments, but it goes pretty high, these reports. Oh, very good.
Yeah.
And then going to Chris, so you talked about the mid-career change. I guess, how did you find industrial design? I wouldn't think someone in the oil industry would really have much visibility to that.
I guess I'm like Jessica, where I've always been a designer. I've always been off to the side doing things, playing with things, taking them apart, putting them together, figuring new ways of doing things. When I was just a little boy, I had my train set, and I'd always be rearranging the layout because I thought a new design would be cool. Underground mapping is very technical in the oil industry, and I was always trying to spice it up a little with design, and it was always getting me into trouble. So eventually it just got to the point where between that and, as I said, the bipolar economic swings, when things were good, it was great, money was everywhere. When things were bad, it was terrible. I just got tired of that. I knew I wanted to design products. I knew I wanted to go back to school and design products. And that's when I discovered industrial design, that's what that was. And
very good.
Haven't looked back since.
Yeah, and so you've been you talked about having been an Energizer for just a little bit. So how long have you been as the in charge of industrial design for Energizer? And can you talk a little bit about what that means at Energizer, what that role is?
Right now, it's interesting because Energizer, when they purchased Handstands, which was my previous employer, I was the creative director, design director there. We had a group of 6. They discovered that they had acquired this resource, and they invited me to come out and head up their in-house efforts, which they hadn't had for about 6 or 7 years. Up to that point, they were always using consultancies. So I had to start the group over again, which is when we hired Joanna and Liz and Tom. It's a small group. There's just the 4 of us. Because of past policies and methodologies that Energizer used, particularly with consultancies, our role right now is somewhat limited, but we are pushing very hard to expand that role and to get them to see us as more than just a design service, but to see us as a strategic core competency. We are recruiting allies in that, and we have those who butt their heads against it. But it's changing. It is a process. Sometimes it can be painfully slow, but we're getting there. It's happening.
Well, good. Glad you're making progress. And Renee, so you started out in toys. I guess, how did you make the switch to, out of toys? How do you break free from that?
Well, it's all the same process, really, right? So everything you do, if you go about it the right way. But when I collect some toy, I'm crazy when it comes to all that stuff. But so starting out in building model kits, that kind of thing too. Always being an artist, having a mechanical aptitude, so you put all these things together and then you get industrial design, right? So that's kind of how it worked. And then just even backing up, I started out as an English major, and then I was going to go to law school. So this is a whole different conversation. But as far as toys go, toys were always something exciting to me, and Fisher Price was my first toy job, actually, in East Aurora, New York. So that was the one time I was working outside of Cleveland, and continuing that with consulting here in Cleveland at a couple other firms, and so working with any number of all the large toy companies, juvenile products companies, all the big brands that everyone knows. But as my consulting firm grew, when I started the business, it was just myself 17 years ago. And at that point, I can do a lot with toys and concepting and understanding play patterns and the psychology of children and how to help development, how to help develop infants and that kind of thing. So honestly, as the business grew and changed, we couldn't compete with the people who I was competing with in the past, the 1-person, 2-person shops. So you see a lot of people in the toy industry. If you're really good at it, you're like, I'm just going to quit and just freelance. And it's still, I don't know if it still works that way, but it was that way for quite some time. And as we grew, just couldn't afford those kind of programs because that's the kind of work that 1 or 2-person shops can do. But the same philosophy and approaching human-centered design, having reasons why you do everything, goes into every part of all the projects we do, no matter which market space, which kind of physical, digital, or service-based product we do.
Very good. We'll get into the, I guess, other questions. So this, I guess, is a question for everybody. Do you see, I guess, design maturity in your company as a journey or destination? Like, is there a state that you're trying to get to, or is it just continuous improvement every year?
I would say for sure it's a journey. I don't think you could ever fully arrive. And that's because design is always following and meeting the shifting needs of the culture at large. And so since that's always shifting, we always need to be adapting and always building new skills and keeping up with new technologies. And, you can never just, be done with research, and you always need to, update that. So for sure, it's a journey. No question from me.
For myself, in a lot of ways, I see it as both. Certainly, we like to think of level 5, that visionary strategic core competency level, as the holy grail. And I think eventually we can get there at Energizer. But in a lot of ways, it's also like the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and that it's always on the horizon. In that the strategic focus is different than the strategic practice of level 5. The focus is ever changing based upon each new generation and each generation's life focus. I think of design of the past 100 years. It's gone from simple styling to design thinking. Now it's experience thinking. I think it's going to go to social environment thinking, where the end user as primary consideration will be displaced with sustainability, and that will become eventually stewardship thinking, which I see as a balance between the end user, social environmental imperatives, and business and profit and growth. And that focus, I think, is very much a journey.
Yeah, I agree. I think what Chris is saying is absolutely right. And I think with both Jesse and Chris talking about it, it is a journey, right? So design maturity, design itself is dynamic, ever evolving. We as designers are creative problem solvers, right? So there are always new variables, new factors. Everything happens and changes all the time. I mean, how are we to politics, economics, technology, society, pandemics, right? Things that happen, they come up, and it's really kind of cool because we're the people who can kind of guide companies, guide economies, and guide societies through. So I guess I feel pretty cocky about what we as designers are able to do and accomplish, because I think we have some really good pragmatic minds who can figure out things and see things that others can't, and it's hard to articulate that in a way that that makes sense. And if we're all talking in an esoteric fashion between designers to designers, we kind of understand that, right? But it really is, the culture of design is something of a journey that you never get to the peak, although you're always trying to get there.
Very good point. I mean, design it's ever changing. That's what we do, and we have to learn how to adapt to it right away. Was there, for all of you, was there an inflection point where you noticed the role of design begin to elevate in your business or industry? And if so, what was that point, or have you not reached it yet?
For Energizer, I think we're about to hit it, simply because of good design that we have created, that it's going out there, and design education that we've been working at for the last 3 years in the company. I think we're getting to that leverage point. I've been in some meetings with director level in other areas of the company, and they're beginning to see the advantage of the strategic advantage of some design methodologies. I think we're about to hit that. With my previous employer, Handstands, I was there for 4 years. 6 months in, design was made absolutely essential. Sales, we went from, in the 4 years I was there, they went from about $68 million a year to $142 million a year. A great deal of that based upon design. For them, it really came, and I think the same for Energizer. It comes down to return on investment, whatever that is. That, whether it's brand, market presence, good design, sales, profit, whatever it is that you can prove that design is essential to successful business.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think that if you think about an inflection point, if I'm looking at it from the standpoint of a design contractor or a design consultancy, IDO was the big flip. They branded what was not their idea, right? So I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Design thinking goes beyond IDO, but they branded it, and it was brilliant. And pretty much, in a way, every consultancy does something pretty much very similar, right? Everyone has their own kind of flavor, everyone has their own style and their own brand, and we the same. So we bring different elements from different places in, but it was the IDO flip, and then the shopping cart thing, right? It was on ABC or whatever that was, right? So now people start to see and understand, oh man, there's a whole different way of looking at doing things. And then another step would be after the turn of the century too, when really things were happening, when after the internet was more wide open, technology changed, email, a lot of these things. Now everyone has all the information in front of them. So we, as special designers who have these special secret sauces, it opened up to everyone else. So now everyone can see what was going on too, right? So this hyperconnectivity, and then now the hockey stick of understanding, we're really at a point where everyone has access to all these things. Everyone can read, understand, the reports that we look at and all the other items too. So it's really, it's moving up very, very quickly right now. And I think we're in a really good place.
I know this is something that we were hitting on earlier before the webinar started. We were talking about the pandemic and how that has really affected a lot of businesses, and I'm sure a lot of people in the audience today are certainly feeling the effects of that. But Renee, how has and maybe you can recap for the audience here how the pandemic has really changed your business, and how design maturity can really maybe help step that up in the future, and what you're planning on doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to, in a very it doesn't sound like I'm very humble, but in a very humble way, say that we're visionary in that we are we are designers. We're designers, design strategists, researchers at my company. So when, as we were talking before we got started, my lease was up in October, and we were all working remotely at that point. I decided, well, you know what? I'm not going to re-sign a lease right now. I'm going to wait till just about now when we're starting to look. Now we're starting to think about, okay, well, where do we want a new office to be? What do we want to do with it? But we've been working remotely for many, many months now. We've forced ourselves to, you kind of take your own medicine. So we always want to tell our clients, well, hey, you got to think differently. You got to challenge, you got to be willing to fail. Let's build prototypes. Let's do that. Well, they're like, well, what about you guys? So now we're doing that where I had the heartburn moment of, oh man, what are we going to do? And we just did it. So, imagining like there's $250 3D printers that the guys can have at their houses running SolidWorks. We have online whiteboarding platforms. We use two different ones. One is called Mural and one is Miro. So Miro and Mural. So Mural, M-U-R-A-L, and M-I-R-O. And these are great because these replace the giant whiteboards and the space that we had where we would pride ourselves on having collaborative time with our clients. Now we're doing it online. We have clients in different states. We have a client in Toronto, say client in Boston, clients everywhere. We are working in real time with them on these online whiteboards. We're working asynchronously with them on these, using a lot of Slack. I mean, Slack, if I don't have Slack on, nobody knows where I am. So it's really an amazing thing, to the point now where, as we're looking for a new office, I'm thinking it's going to be like a fourth of the size of the old one. We're going to be able to work hybrid at home. Everyone's got a laptop, and then they keep their printers at home. If they want to go head down and work on something for a couple of days, stay home, come in, we're going to figure it out. But it's kind of exciting, and this is also something good that we can help our clients kind of figure out too, because if we could do this for ourselves and with them, we're proving the model for them as well.
And can I add to that?
Please do.
Energizer has been working remote now for almost a year. And one of the nice things about it is that it's, in many ways, it's forcing those who haven't normally used design thinking methodologies to adopt them virtually to get the job done. And that's all part of that design education that we're hoping is going to make a significant change. And because our CPG products are basically automotive based, it's in the automotive industry, we're seeing, because of COVID, we're seeing cars becoming health points, a place where people, when they lock themselves in their cars, it's safe from bacteria and viruses and things like that. And that's a place where we see the potential for new products. So COVID has done that for us too.
That's great. Jesse,
Yeah.
do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's been really interesting, the shift, I think that it's been challenging in some ways, but also really amazing the way that we were able to collaborate so quickly. And through those things, we were just starting to get into like mural, and being able to, I don't know, like even if you're in a meeting and you need to like ask someone something that is related to that meeting right then, it's just like you're moving a lot faster and able to get a lot of feedback right when you need it, and that's been like really, really useful. And I really like that instead of kind of waiting till you see somebody in the hall, next week, you're able to kind of connect and kind of move faster through problems. So I hope that that's something that we continue even if we do return to the office.
Yeah, definitely. Going back to Chris, so you're saying you're hoping that your inflection point is right around the corner for advancing designing in your company. What do you think the biggest roadblock is for you right now?
That's pretty easy. It's an ossified mindset of seeing design as a service, not a strategic core competency. Let me explain that. We had an R&D town hall a few days ago, and we were celebrating years of service with the company. One person had 35, another one had 45 years service. And I didn't think that stuff happened anymore. So I was kind of amazed at that when I got to Energizer. And that tenure with Energizer tends to create a this is the way we've always done it policy. Energizer is, it's a commodities company. They sell batteries, and they've jumped into retail CPG with auto care products in order to expand the company, but they're still working under a commodities business model, which with retail CPG doesn't particularly work. So that model is one of engineers create and make the product, marketing owns and sells the product, and design is just there to kind of pretty it up so it's sellable, and the engineers can package it in some way. And in the past, as I've said before, they've used consultancies as a service, not a partner. Create designs for us. Okay, we like these. Now get lost. We're going to work on this and we're going to make all the decisions. So that has been our biggest challenge, is to come in there and break that pattern. Ultimately, what it really comes down to is that Energizer, there's just not enough churn in business processes and in innovation patterns. But there is change happening. We're forcing it in a lot of ways, but hopefully we can get Energizer to be a little bit more level 3, level 4 than the level 1, level 2 that they're working at right now.
Yeah, if I can add to what Chris said, yeah, I mean, the word commodity is something that, so when we're as a design consultancy, so right now I'm talking to a potential client, and I'm going through the process of this, they're looking for the right resource, right? So we got to check all the boxes, and then which NAICS code are you? What commodity are you? And so it's like you're a service, you're this, you're that, right? But you're not a strategic partner. You're something that we're going to check the boxes, and when it comes to it, and a lot of times we hear it's like, well, it's not the cost, it's really about the fit, and then it comes down to, well, the cost really has a lot to do with it, and I get that, but we're all fighting against that. Like, we're not the people who just put a pretty paint job on things. We are we are a huge strategic business resource, and I think we still fight against that. So Chris has to fight it internally. We have to fight it from another level as well, because while Chris is fighting, I would be working with someone that Chris doesn't even know is trying to qualify us as a contractor. So anyway, sorry, Jesse, if I jumped on you.
No, I think a really useful thing that we've done is, taking initiative to be able to kind of take data that our marketing partners are giving us in like a Word document or a spreadsheet where it's just a bunch of text, and like they're only seeing numbers and units per store per week and sales numbers and figures, and everything's just organized in the way that they see things. And we've been able to take the data that they're harvesting for their own purposes and shine a light or kind of filter it through, what things that we notice aesthetically. So we've kind of like remixed their data and put it into like a visual chart where we show, price points vertically along like units per store per week horizontally, and then we plot the actual image of the product, which usually sometimes isn't even in their spreadsheets, so like aesthetics is just kind of like thrown out because they think that's just something you slap on at the end, but if you actually marry those things all together and view them on a chart and print it out big enough, when we were in the office, we would print it out big enough so you could see the details of each individual product. We were able to start seeing patterns of where things were selling, like things are selling in this price band. They all have this same visual characteristic, and that's something you can't tell in an Excel sheet, so just like bringing in, different tools, and like I think being digital too, like we are able to like zoom in now and like see like, wait, how many beads does that farmhouse traditional like faucet have on it, and like how many does that one have, and like I think that being able to kind of reframe data that the business already has and put our lens on it is like a really powerful business tool. And that's and I think that really involved us taking the initiative to do that. Nobody asked us to do that, but I think when you kind of like go above and beyond to like kind of help do that even before your pen hits the paper, the Cintiq or the iPad, to be able to like show that we have value in defining more focused project goals even before we start designing, because of the way that we see things. I think that that's been like really paramount to like the business starting to see our value beyond just sprinkling some aesthetics on it at the end.
And Jesse, I'd like to build on that just with one statement. One of the real issues we have at Energizer, because our group is part of the engineering R&D group, is how do you get engineers quantitatively improve a product based on solving for the emotional or qualitative perceptions of end users? To them, there's a total disconnect there. They want to see all the qualitative, oh, our batteries last 8% longer. Well, the end user doesn't see that. They don't detect that. But they do get the perception when it's 50% longer. Okay, I can see that. That disconnect is what we fight with all the time.
For sure. I think that's we're definitely in the same boat, since the majority of our products are really what we call like trim projects, where you're just reskinning the same internal functionality, but we've been able to start to build more, I would say it's more qualitative research instead of quantitative, but it's enough, I feel like, to help define more focused goals and feel a lot more confident selecting designs through putting a logic on it. So it takes time though, like to be able to build that trust in order to even be funded to do that type of research. But we've been lucky enough to develop a strategy where we're identifying our trends and then testing those trends annually. And then we have a research firm that is able to track the trajectory of the perception of those trends over time. So we can see how things are moving from emerging to mainstream to declining, and from mass appeal to niche appeal. And we have it's a chart. So it's data, and Moen loves data and research and these things. So it's you could have gone into that research already feeling a certain way about farmhouse style or Lux Modern style. But then having an objective truth, I think gives me personally more confidence. It gives our team more confidence as we give each other feedback. And ultimately it gives, the business and our customers tons of confidence going into things to be able to see that. But like I said, it takes time, it takes time to build that research up to be able to quantify aesthetics in some way.
Definitely.
Yep, we need one of you.
We're getting there, Chris.
Hey, I wanted to just really quick, just kind of pull on something that Chris was getting at. You had mentioned that your design organization is in the engineering part of the organization, yes, or it's under engineering, or however that maps out. I'm sure there's a lot of people in the audience today that may, in their own respective companies may find themselves in a similar position, or how does that maybe differ at Moen, Jesse?
Yeah, so our design department over the years has shifted in terms of where it falls in the business. And I think, at one point it was more under an engineering umbrella. And then before where we are today, it was actually under our, with our marketing department, our global marketing department. And we definitely still, no matter where we really were on paper, we always viewed ourselves kind of as an internal design consultancy, and our clients are all the different business units, whether they were inside our own business unit or not. But I think one of the, to answer one of the earlier questions, when I saw the biggest, shift towards a more mature future, was when the industrial design actually was pulled out from any of those business units, and it's actually now its own entity, adjacent to marketing and engineering reporting. Jason is my manager, and he reports directly to the CMIO. So I think that was a really powerful move for building our integrity.
And Energizer uses the same in-house consultancy model. We treat our engineering and marketing people as clients in the same way. Unfortunately, we're not quite in between yet. We'd like to get there, but that's the model that we see following. Because in a lot of ways, we're the glue that hold those two together.
For sure. Yeah, that's design for sure. I feel like we're like the glue and the connectors, and we're the ones seeing opportunities and ways to link ideas together and people together, departments. So that's awesome. I feel like, yeah, no matter where you feel you are on paper with the business, just mentally kind of viewing yourself that way is a step, because I know it takes a lot more than what we can directly affect to make those types of changes.
Definitely. Yeah, Jesse, I really liked your mentioning, that you guys basically have reframed the data. You've visualized it to help them understand, and that's part of a strategy. So what are some other strategies you guys have used to pitch design services that may be pushing the company, or Renee, in your case, your clients, to higher levels of design maturity?
Going my way. So talking about what we pitch to move forward, is that? Yeah.
What are some strategies you guys have used to help push that maturity and get them to understand, the design aspect?
Yeah, I tell you, it's so being a designer, doing the job, looking at what the end result is going to be is one thing, but part of our job is also helping our clients grow their culture. So I guess the word culture is the biggest part of what this is all about too. So hearing what both Chris and Jesse and even what Jason is saying too about the businesses, to get to that level 5, right? You want to be a visionary. Culture has to be a big part of it, right? Because now if you have to go and you have to not fix, but refine a culture, something where you've got people that are there. It's not been done this way before. We never do it that way. We've got all these silos, and now we as consultants have a bigger challenge because we know how to get where we're going to get, but if we have someone, a buddy of mine calls them antibodies. So the antibodies in these companies come back, and now they start to attack everything that you're doing because, well, hold on now. This changes everything. I'm like, yes, it does. But it is. It's pushing that culture. It's helping to understand all the stakeholders that you're dealing with. So I'll highlight one of our clients is an insurance company actually who has an innovation group, and the innovation group actually started at a much higher level of design maturity because they all came in as students of design thinking, of human-centered design. They worked with both IDEO and Balance. We of course were far better than the bigger guys, but I like to, yeah, right. But nonetheless, they came in at a higher level, right? So being able to work with them, we'd already then, just starting as we talk to them, we're already at another level. So now we don't have to worry about the antibodies from the business units. They're already wanting to move forward in what would appear to be the right direction as far as the process we go. So probably then one of our biggest challenges, I guess, is going back to culture. How do we help our clients build and grow their cultures to be able to move forward in maturity?
That's great.
So real quick, we have a question from the audience from Brian Milliff. And this might be more geared towards you guys in corporate, but can you guys kind of talk more about how the design team works with other parts of the company? Like when, how many design options are discussed versus like focused design recommendations based on the objectives?
Yeah, so as an internal team designer, I think this is something that's shifted over the recent years, where we're finding ways to provide less quantity and more quality concepts to move things faster, because our timelines, I'm sure everyone's the same, like every business wants to start speeding up that timeline more and more. So we've found taking time to do those types of annual research studies to be able to have more objective truth that the business feels comfortable acting on. Having that study helps us frame our project briefs a lot more accurately to solve the problem at hand for every individual project. So and again, that was kind of like an initiative that our team took, to go beyond just what the business has defined as the project goals, but to go deeper into things that actually affect what we contribute to the project. So we fill out our own industrial design briefs and make sure, we sit down with our project team that every time a new project kicks off at Moen, if it's actually something that's, intended for, launching in the market, we have a team set up of one lead product manager for marketing, and one lead engineer, and one lead project manager, and one lead industrial designer. And that core team fills out that design brief at the kickoff of the project. And all of those outside research efforts feed into help, setting those goals. And then, we take that competitive set from marketing and any data they have on the units per store per week or any of that type of stuff. And we we reframe it the way I was talking about through like our lens. And then we find like very, very specific goals, and we sketch within very specific, you know, only this decor style, only with these features, because we know we have to hit this price point and this exact platform. So I would say the majority of our projects are that way. It's a little different story when things are more of like an innovation that you know has it's kind of hard to like pinpoint it so much. But I deal primarily with those types of projects that are more able to be pinpointed, and then we always are referencing our designs off of those goals, and then take those concepts to research. And instead of just asking our test subjects, which concept do they like the most, we're able to tell them like, hey, we want to hit this decor style. You don't need to know exactly why, but this is the decor style. Which product do you feel like fits this decor style the best, instead of just like, what do you like the most? So like we do ask them those questions too, but I think just having more detailed focus from the very beginning helps you measure each concept's success a lot better at the end, And it does help, engineers love following rules. So if you set up really strict rules for them, they're more inclined to fight for a new aerator shell or whatever, if they see that whatever the current options are don't follow the rules, but you set those rules up for them, Yeah, I see a comment. Yep, engineers definitely like rules, so set the rules for them.
Rules of engagement.
With Energizer, right now we have 3 different timelines for processes that we use. One is just purely aesthetic, typically because we have such a short timeline to work in, and they just wanted, an aesthetic change in a product. We can work with that. We try to discourage that as much as possible. We then have a longer one, where there's some research in it. Typically, marketing and/or engineering has done a bunch of that research, and we will add to our own. And then we have the longest one, which we like the most, where we do the research and we come back to them with the data and the information. We discuss it with them. We get everybody on board, and then the design brief is created, and we definitely work off that, so that every stakeholder is involved in that. When it comes to the number of iterations, as a design group, sometimes we involve other departments, not that they're always terribly good at iteration, but they do bring a different perspective into what we're doing, and we'll create quite a number of different ideas. We will then curate those down to the best ideas, present those to our group and a little bit outside the major stakeholders, try and get their feel for what's going on, along with the data that we've produced in the empathizing and the testing of products. Typically, when it comes to a decision, we get it down to just 3 options. We've just simply found that anything more than 3 and they get confused. It's too much. They can't make the decision, which is kind of nice, because then we can, in some ways, educate them on what is good aesthetic and ergonomic end user design by pushing them in a direction that it really needs to go in. So too often we get pulled into just the aesthetic thing, and that's painful, because you end up with mediocre design.
Definitely. It seems like we're running short on time, but just to close out the session, Renee, Chris, and Jesse, do you guys have any last minute words of advice on how to overcome these roadblocks, challenges, etc.? Please feel free to jump in.
Well, I guess I'll jump in here. I think it's really, again, culture and its stakeholders, everybody you're dealing with. So when we think about designing properly for an end user, that's one thing, but all the other things that come into play, things that kill innovation groups, things that kill new ideas, things that anything that's going to take take and squash the progress that you're making, the things that we're doing. Understanding, I always look at product designers as the hub of the wheel, because we speak all these different languages, and we can visualize, we can help visualize for our engineers, as Jesse says, right? Like, yeah, we have to be able to answer those questions. We have to be able to translate, you know, what does sales or marketing say here? How does that translate into something that, yes, is going to be manufacturable, also has the brand elements, also has all the other points, you know? And that's something that we know all these languages. We have to get better at them. We have to be able to empathize with everybody we're dealing with, and not just the people we're designing for. So probably that's my big takeaway.
My takeaway is, to me, it's have a planned overall vision of your design strategy of where you want to be and when you want to be there. Focus on design methodologies and their tactical application in your work until stakeholders get to see it as a strategic advantage. Learn the back end of design, the business side of design, and you have to work with all those other departments, all those other stakeholders to get the project launched, which is always a compromise. Because when you're seen as seeing the big overall corporate picture and where design strategically fits in, then you'll be given a seat at the big table. You'll have that equal voice. And the last thing, be aware of your audience, who you're communicating with. Renee, you just said the same thing. Speak to marketing in marketing terms. Speak to engineering in their qualitative engineering terms. You have to be able to present in all those different modes to be successful.
I would definitely build on that. And I saw the question from Maynard about, you know, any advice for freelancers that, you know, like how to be taken seriously. You know, I think a big thing is building trust, and that could mean, you know, different things. Like Chris is saying, for, you know, different people. So like, I think making sure that you understand what your client values and how they measure success, and finding ways to show examples of how you've been successful in that way in other places or on other projects, and having that relationship of trust set up, and that's a lot of things, you know, like, you know, definitely like the, you know, the baseline of like showing up to meetings, you know, ahead of time and like over prepared and all of that kind of stuff, you know. Sometimes easier said than done with like our bizarro lifestyle right now, but yeah, just any way to build that trust and to show a record of wins. Anytime that, you know, now that we have this study internally that has shown a lot of success and has been a win for the business in other ways, where we've used that research to inform new launches that have been successful in the market. Now, I think after that, those, you know, series of wins, we've been taken a lot more seriously. So I think any way that you can kind of build that cred up, or at least prove that you've been credible and with other people in the past in the ways that they value. So getting to know the client too, and, you know, it's a lot of, you know, education there.
And building on getting the client, something I learned real fast when I worked at consultancy was, you have a decision to make. Are you designing for the CEO, for the person with the biggest paycheck, or you're designing for the end user? If you're designing for the CEO, then your service. If you're designing for the end user, then you can be a strategic partner. And making that decision, coming to that agreement and that realization makes life a whole lot easier.
Yep. Well said, Chris. Yeah, I think too, Maynard, that there's a lot to think about here. It's that credibility. It is, you know, you have to have your standards, right? Are you designing for the user, or are you designing for the big boss? And sometimes the big boss isn't going to want to hear and see what might make the most sense, and that's always a challenge. So there's the balance of, hey, I got to get this work, but I also have to do the right work. And I have to do the right thing. but inevitably doing the right thing is always going to help you build your credibility and build your brand.
Great.
Well said.
Thank you so much, everybody. This was a wonderful conversation. We hope to have more of these conversations in the future. Panelists, if you feel so inclined, please drop your emails or contact info below. I know we had a couple questions that didn't have time to get answered from our audience, and I'm sure they'd love to be able to talk with you further. But again, thank you guys. We are very happy to have had such a wonderful audience. A wonderful panel. I believe Chris, Renee, and Jesse, you guys were perfect for this topic. And thank you for answering all the questions so thoroughly.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Really
you. This was a
appreciate it.
pleasure.
Yeah,
That
thank
was
you for the
fun.
opportunity.
Absolutely. We did record this session, so once our team figures out, where to put it, we will let you guys know. So thank you all.
You bet.